All right, switching gears a little bit away from specifics on the science fiction proficiency and talking a little bit about compare-contrast writing, because as we finish up our proficiency attempt number 1 on Harrison Bergeron, we're actually going to watch a movie adaptation called 2081. It's a short film, but it is based off of Harrison Bergeron, and I'm going to have you guys do a short essay, a compare-contrast essay on the 2 different versions of the same story. So at the end of this presentation, you'll better understand how to structure a compare-contrast written assignment, and know that we'll be writing a short essay comparing Harrison Bergeron to the film 2081. And you will be able to use these notes to put together the short essay. So take careful notes. The better they are, the better they'll help you on the actual short essay. All right, so some things to consider in compare-contrast writing. When you're comparing, you're showing similarities in 2 different subjects, and when you're contrasting, you're showing the differences in 2 different subjects. Now, within this short story or short essay writing assignment, I'm going to ask for you guys to make a decision on whether or not you're going to compare, if you're going to contrast, or if you're going to do both. Now, know that if you're going to do both, you need to be careful in how you're organizing your short essay. So when you're thinking about the topic that you're choosing, it usually requires 2 subjects, and you need to know a lot of attributes for each of them, 15 to 20 different things that stick out in both of these 2 things that you're comparing. So, for example, comparing the presidencies of Abraham Lincoln and Chester Arthur, meaning you need to know at least 15 to 20 things about the President Lincoln and the President Arthur so that you can actually compare, contrast, or figure out what you're going to do. In this instance, we're going to compare and contrast, or do both, and or compare and contrast, I guess I should say, on Harrison Bergeron in 2081. So you should be able to identify 15 to 20 items only about Harrison Bergeron, and 15 to 20 items to compare only about the movie 2081. And then you're going to need to take a look at those 15 to 20 things and decide basically how you're going to attack the essay. So what you need to be thinking about is saying something specifically this, not that, or this and that, and being as valid and specific as possible. So you definitely want to say something like, I have a red sweater, but Mary has a gray sweatshirt. So you're specifically stating that you have 2 different things. One's a sweater, one's a sweatshirt. Mine is red, hers is gray, and you're actually specifically stating something. Whereas instead, if you were to do something like, I have a red sweater and Mary doesn't, you're not really giving me a lot of details and explaining exactly what you're comparing and contrasting. So think about being very specific. Before you're writing, like I said earlier, you need to determine if you're comparing or contrasting or doing both. By the way, there's a big fat pencil in the top right-hand corner, which tells me, or should tell you, that you're taking a lot of notes on this. So just make a quick little T-chart and write these down. Also, as far as the organization is concerned, if you're doing a single paragraph, you need to do compare or contrast. If you're doing multi-paragraph, you can compare or contrast, or you can do both. We are doing multi-paragraph, a short essay of multiple paragraphs. It's not going to be singular. So I'm telling you, you can have the option of just comparing or contrasting or doing both. So your choice, you have to make the decision on what exactly you're going to do. Pause the video if you feel like you need to stay on this screen to take down your notes. All right, so words that signify that you're compare and contrast writing. So if you've got some comparing words, or you're thinking about using some comparing words, words like same, similar, alike, similarities, common, comparable, or comparable, depending on how you want to pronounce it, are great words if you're doing, or when you're doing, a comparing paragraph within this short essay. Likewise, if you're contrasting, words like different, unlike, vary, differences, differ, I like that one. Variations is also good. Opposite or opposing. Clearly, you can go through these lists and pick out things that are a little bit more higher level vocabulary. So that might not be a bad idea, actually. Go through and kind of circle the ones that you think are sound a little smarter, if you will. Again, you should be writing these words down. There's a pencil in the top right-hand corner, just to remind you. All right, you do not have to write this down. I just wanted to give you some example sentences. If you want to write these down because you think that it will help you in the short essay, feel free, but I'm not making you. So going back to what we talked about with topic sentences, you could do a simple declarative where you're simply full out declaring whether you're going to talk about compare similarities or differences. I give you some examples here. You can do a number statement, but know that if you say, you know, Harrison Bergeron and the movie 2081 have 3 distinct differences, then that means you better have 3 paragraphs where you're going to talk about those 3 different pieces. So just make sure that if you're doing a number statement, that your body paragraphs do actually match up with whatever number you use in that statement. As far as question, I want to remind you again, if you're going to ask a question, that the answer has to be more complex than a yes or no answer. So just remember that. I don't necessarily tell you to shy away from it, but you definitely should be thinking about using question statements sparingly. These ones, these examples, I think, are a little bit more complex and are going to be what your teachers are really looking for if you're going to be continuing on through honors and AP classes. So situation stance, I want to remind you again, is where you're going to state what's happening or the situation, and then you're going to, after the comma, state what your opinion is. So if you want to say, the movie 2081 is vastly different than the short story Harrison Bergeron, comma, I personally like the short story better. That's stating what you're doing in that you're comparing and contrasting the short story and the movie, and then you're saying that you like one better, so you're giving your own opinion or stance. Fanboys, that's just, I think I talked about that in another homework video, but it's basically doing a compound sentence where you're using a conjunction, like and, but, or, let's see, for, and, I'm going through the FAN. So for, and, nor, but, I forget what the, sorry, or, yet, and then what's the S? So, maybe? I have to go back and look at my notes. But anyways, that's what the acronym stands for, is all the different conjunctions that you could use in that situation. And then a semicolon is just basically creating a, complex sentence, and you're stating what the topic is, and it's very similar to a situation stance, to be perfectly honest. Instead, you're giving us a little bit more complex structure by using things like however or nevertheless and continuing on with the sentence. So again, you don't need to copy these down, but I'm just giving you lots of examples on how you can start these short essays. Okay, so again, don't need to take notes on this. I just want to go over it. As far as the scoring for this short essay, the ideas and content needs to have some meaning and important ideas that convey that you've chose the right characteristics to compare and contrast. So I need to be able to see that you're picking the right main ideas to focus on. As far as the organization, in the multi-paragraph, which is what we're doing, you need to focus on the idea of whether you're contrasting or doing both, and you need to organize your paragraphs accordingly. So I think you should have kind of like an intro, and then if you're going to do both, maybe you have a paragraph on comparing and a paragraph on contrasting, and then maybe you wrap it up with a sentence or two as a conclusion. But you still should have an intro, a body, and conclusion. If you're deciding that you're just going to compare, then you should have an intro, a comparing body paragraph, and a conclusion. So you'd be stuck to about 3 paragraphs. So just think about how you're organizing that and where you're going to go with your paragraph structure. Sentence fluency, just again, constantly be aware of what types of sentence you're using. I really should see variety. Word choice, focus on replacing overused, everybody says it like that kind of words. Think about more unusual and precise words that specifically pertain to science fiction. That's where it says often content-specific vocab can tremendously improve the piece of writing. So focus on, historical context we've learned about the 1950s. Focus on the key elements of science fiction or literature in general, and placing in those pieces, like, the author definitely uses foreshadowing in this story to create Just by using the word foreshadowing automatically elevates your writing. So doing simple things like that really, it's focusing on your word choice and how you're putting together your sentences. Word choice and putting that stuff together is probably done the best in the revision process. And, people that are really thinking about how to improve their writing and how to get that A are constantly searching for the right word, the right sentence structure. And that's just something you guys have to try and challenge yourself to do. As far as conventions, just remember you need to be the best editor you can be. Spot those grammar and spelling mistakes. I am not your editor. Just bottom line, I'm not your editor. I'm not going to show you where those little mistakes are, but it can ding you in your final score. So just be watching for those. Okay, so this is a little bit different. I do want you to go ahead and get out a whole sheet of paper and create what you see on the screen in front of you. So obviously put your name, date, and period. We're going to use this in class tomorrow or maybe on Monday. It depends on how far we get with Harrison Bergeron. But when we watch the video, we will use this. So at the top of the paper, put the topic, which is Harrison Bergeron and 2081, and compare and contrast those two pieces. And you're going to need to be able to list 15 to 20 things on Harrison Bergeron. You could do that now. You don't even need to wait, I guess, within that circle. And in the second circle, you're going to list things from the movie 2081. You need to decide after that, down at the bottom, decide if you're going to compare, contrast, or both, so you can circle it once we've done the actual activity. And then in that box down below, you're going to pick some potential main ideas that you're going to put together in the paragraph of the actual essay. Anyways, just take a look at this paper and put together everything that you see here, and we'll use it in class either on Thursday of this week or Monday of next week, since we don't have school on Friday. It depends on how far we get this week. Again, if you need to pause the video to make sure you get this whole thing down, that's fine. As soon as you're done, though, with that piece of paper, you're finished. Don't forget to go back and write a summary about tonight's homework and a question, all on compare and contrast writing. And I'll see you in class tomorrow, and your whisks will be due tomorrow, so don't forget.